from the through the laptop microphone, which is not ideal, which is hence the shouting. The cell phone in the center is also grabbing audio that we can use for minutes purposes, and that will do a far better job. But for anyone that would be live streaming right now, they'll have seems like a choppy video and terrible audio experience, and we do apologize for that. But we will press on with our agenda nevertheless, because we are meeting our mandated requirements under the Freedom of Information Act as I understand them. Excellent, thank you.
All right, so matters from the public. Do we have any matters from the public? All right, approval of minutes. We have the May 19 minutes. Any comments or corrections to the minutes? Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
The minutes are approved. Financial report.
All right, so it's a little too early for an FY26 wrap up because we're still going through that process. So what you'll see here is the beginning of FY27. Looks a little bit bare because we were still waiting on a few information. So the tax rebate section, we do those a lot, but we don't know those until we get a little bit closer to the deadlines for those. So those are TBD. And then the stuff at the top is what you'll see, the bond revenues, the tax rebate, or the estimated tax rebate from the general fund, and interest on accrued EDA funds. And then at the bottom, some more recent stuff. So Go Virginia Wet Lab, which we're familiar with, is going to come back around in January, and Bel Air Farms, which is also pretty recent. So that's what we have for this one. And then we're going to bring back this one from a few months ago that you guys gave me some feedback on. So this right here is a 5-year outlook, but a more simplified version for you guys to look at. So this only takes into account the money that you guys see. So bond fees, interest on it, your invested accounts, and the admin costs of minutes or legal fees or charges of that nature. Some of this is placeholder. We don't know. So, for example, interest accrued and the admin costs, we're not exactly sure what that's going to play out with. Those are placeholders. Those are as best estimates as I can see at the moment. The bond fees are pretty set in stone because we know over the course of time what those are going to be. And then that top fund. So if you'll see in the very top first left column, FY27 at 890, that was the start of that contingency line item of that big pool of funds that you guys had available to you. So we go down starting at this year, we start with that, and then we add in the stuff from this year. And then the ending point from this year is the beginning point of next year. So this should give you a good, this won't be updated super often because this is supposed to be a 5-year look. So, but this gives you a good starting point for when you guys are looking for programming funds, how much you might or might not have at your disposal.
And then we've committed some of that money to things like Urbana Futures, road improvements. Right?
So that was already taken into account here.
Oh, so that's,
Yeah.
oh.
And the other thing this won't take into account that you may be wondering why that's the case is a lot of the like agreements that you guys have, the funding that comes from 5807 instead of specifically the EDA itself, we don't count that here because that is
Right.
reimbursed.
Pass
out of
through.
that.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
passed through.
Okay. Well, that's great.
Cool. All right.
And then I will add one comment to the financial report regarding Lewis and Clark. We met, Emily and I met with the interim executive director of the Lewis and Clark Exploratory Center. We had a really good discussion with them. They've been going through some transitions, and they're going to get back to us. We've asked them to come back and report to the board in the fall after they've done some reorganization and talk about what they're doing and their ideas for how to go forward. And we explained some history of how we got to where we are, the way the loan arose, payments that have happened, how we got to an agreement. And we told them that we wanted to work with them to get the loan repaid in a way that would work for them and be supportive. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, that's great.
So we'll be back with more news on that in the fall.
Awesome.
Any other questions or comments on the financial report? All right. Next.
Some of you all may remember in late April, we experienced a significant freezing event in our region. and that major frost caused some significant vineyard damage to our winery customers, and it's making this year's pruning critical to protect the long-term vine health and productivity of the sector, and without it is an anticipated total loss. So today with us we have Tracy Love and Corey Craighill that are representing the Monticello Wine Trail, and they have a presentation that they'd like to share. If you all would like to come up. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see if I know how to do this.
Is it on?
It should be on. The thing was green on the side.
Yep.
Okay.
There's
There
a
we go.
delay.
There's a delay.
Like everything else.
Yeah.
Yes.
It changed here quickly.
That's great to know. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to have us here today. My name is Tracy Love, and I'm the Executive Director of the Monticello Wine Trail. And joining me is winemaker Corey Craighill, winner of this year's Virginia Governor's Cup, and also the chair of our education committee. We are here today on behalf of the trail to present an opportunity that we believe will help build the long-term resilience of the Monticello AVA and the Central Virginia, our biggest tourism and agricultural industries. So I'm going to pass it to Corey. We're going to kind of ping pong this. We're still on. That's you.
Okay, cool. So yes, I'm Corey Craighill, and I'm here to represent part of the Monticello Wine Trail, which covers 40 plus wineries in this area. I've been part of this area for this industry for 15 years, so I'm speaking not just for the trail, but for friends and colleagues. Today we're requesting $20,000 to bring a world-renowned pruning experts, Simonette and Cirque, and because of the two frosts and the freeze event that happened this April in 2026. And that event, between those three events, those affected, I haven't talked to a single winemaker where that didn't affect them and their vineyard. So this is not just an education program, but it's an investment in our workforce development, agricultural resilience, and most importantly, as Tracy said, the tourism industry that we've built over the last couple decades. And just to say that pruning decisions affect our wineries both big and small. So no matter how much those big or small wineries invested in site selection or frost protection measures, pruning is something that we all need to do every single year. And with the freeze event that happened in April, we're looking at a decision making that is not going to affect just 2027, but 2027, 28, 29, 30 for the next 30 plus years. And so it's a direct impact for our agricultural structures and the economy surrounding those.
Yeah, and even with preventative measures being taken, like lighting candles, helicopters, on a different scale for each winery. And then the Monticello AVA, as Corey mentioned, is a regional economic driver. The AVA won Wine Enthusiast Wine Region of the Year in 2023, as you probably know. The Virginia wine industry brings in $1.73 billion annually, and the Monticello Wine Trail and AVA is about 30% of that. We're the largest vineyard growing area in the state and have the largest population of wineries, driving people here not only for wine experience, but for restaurants and lodging and all sorts of tourism activities. And we have 40 plus wineries and $48.5 million in local tourism tax revenue. So protecting our AVA also means protecting one of Virginia's biggest agricultural and tourism entities. And wine tourism, I guess I said all of that. I have more data if anybody wants more data, but I feel like this is kind of driving home the point that, we all know the region that we live in and what tourism brings to it. And if we don't have good looking vineyards and, profitable wineries, it's not going to be a great visitor experience.
Why does this matter now as opposed to last year or next year? And as we've already said, it's the frost and the freeze event. As I mentioned, I've been in this industry for 15 years, but I've worked for people that have been in it double that. And in speaking with them, we all agree that this is one of the worst freeze events that's ever hit our area. So even though the crop loss has occurred in 2026, we have to take measures in 2027 to rebuild, because vineyards are permanent structures. So if you have a garden, for example, if you got hit by the frost event, you could plant another tomato plant in your garden, but we can't do that as easily. It takes 3 to 4, sometimes 5 years to get your first crop. And so when you get hit, when your young vines get hit by this event, or even if you have old vines that get by this event, you have to rebuild the following year. So,
So let me ask a question. What was the actual, do we know the impacts or what the losses would be from this year's frost event? Do we have a sense of what those are?
Yes, yes and no. So just anecdotally, Septon area where I work, we lost 100% of our crop. And not only did we lose 100% of our crop, in some areas in our vineyard, we lost 30% of our permanent structure due to the freeze. And what that means actually is the vine will crack. And when it cracks, it damages the lymphatic system of the structure, and it will either parts of the plant will die off or the entire system will die off. So if you walk in our vineyard, you'll see where half the vine is green and performing, but there's no fruit on it, and half the vine looks dead, but it's been pruned. So you can see the cracks in the vine. And in preparation for this, I was reading the Virginia Vineyards Association newsletter, and Benoit at Pollock was writing that he has been seeing this all over. So it's not just Septon area that has the cracking. After the freeze event, I was texting Benoit, I was texting Mathieu at King Family, I was texting Kirsty at Blenheim, just to see how they fared. And just between those 3 or 4 people, the consensus was that if your vineyard was below an elevation of 880, that you experienced extreme loss. Even if your elevation was above 880, so for example, Valley Road, they have 2 vineyard sites that are right next to each other, and they both overlap at 880, and one vineyard completely lost 100% of their fruit, and the other vineyard only lost like 20%, even though they both overlap at that 880. So site selection is really important, but part of why we're asking for this Simina insert to come here, and I will do that on the next slide, is, as I said earlier, pruning is something that can help rebuild the structure of the vine. Whether you lost, like for us, for example, on the block where we lost 30% due to cracking, we do have some vines that have regrowth at the bottom. So we didn't lose the vine completely, we can retrain, but in order to do that in a way, in a mindset that's going to ensure long-term health of the vine, so that either if we do decide to replant or we retrain, we're doing that with the thought of this vineyard is going to be here for 30 plus years. And now what we're talking about specifically with the freeze frost event doesn't even take into consideration that Virginia itself is a challenging, very humid climate. And this pruning system, this pruning system specifically addresses not only the rebuild of vineyards, but also it performs well in these humid climates because of the way that they teach you to cut. And I know that sounds really simple to, just cut here, cut there. You've been, people have been pruning for decades in Virginia, but they've been pruning. There's lots of different ways to prune, but this mechanism is tailored for to reduce trunk disease, which we see a lot in Virginia because of the humid climate. We get a lot of rain usually. We get a lot of rain in very specific times this season that are very delicate for whether it's for pruning or for canopy management or for harvest. So when we have good systems, when we start out the year well, it helps us be more efficient throughout the rest of the year. So if we can understand this pruning system now for year one, it builds on itself year after year. So it's not just, the Simonette insert comes and they do their class and then we leave. Well, first of all, it's the thought behind this is to do sort of a train the trainer. I think we said teach one, reach one. So the idea is that there are 16 participants per class, and at the moment we have enough to fill 2 classes, one in English and one in Spanish. And as you all, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but I'm not always the one out there doing the work. Those guys that do the work, they spend a lot of hours in the heat, and sometimes it rains, sometimes it doesn't. So to have the class both in English and in Spanish is very valuable. So the idea is that even though there are only 16 spots per class, those people that attend the class will then train their employees and kind of spread the word of this pruning system. I went way off.
No, yes. I just want to add, you did a great job. For actual data numbers, the Virginia Vineyards Association did send out a survey across the state to calculate exact numbers of loss. And so I think I shared that with Ashley. I can reshare it. But AJ Greeley, who's also on the board of the Monticello Wine Trail, is the president of the Virginia Vineyards Association. So we do have actual data numbers. And the other thing I want to note about this loss is that it's the first year that we're also seeing, while there is second growth, it's ripening at a totally different rate. And so it's the first year, and this is statewide. I mean, I've talked to folks in Loudoun County as well, but winemakers and growers don't really know quite how to handle it because by the sight, like the grapes could look the same ripeness, but their pH or phenolics could be completely different. So that is going to be a challenge for this harvest, separate from this issue. And then, we sent out a survey to the wineries within the trail. And actually, since I published this slide, we've had 5 more wineries share interest. And it's going to be, we have like 39 plus vineyard folks that have already shown interest. So we know that the interest is there. 75% said yes, definitely. And I guess we can sort of just roll into the next one. But so the demand is certainly there. We've just heard that they would love to keep it as affordable as possible going into the off season, because the other issue is that even though you don't have a producing vineyard, you still have to manage it. So they still have crews out there. Like, you can't just ignore it until the next season, also separate from pruning. But so the wineries don't have any fruit, and they're taking a loss on all of this labor. And they're also looking at potentially bringing in grapes from out of state, which also doesn't really do a huge service to, I mean, I wouldn't say our region specifically, but it's not, a habit that we want to get into. But the survey also told us that most people felt comfortable spending about $200 per winery. The cost of this class is about $1,000 a person. And then we are trying to seek some, additional funding that the wineries wouldn't cover the gap, which is why we're here, because we don't really have any other options. And it's not like we're asking to throw a party. Like, this is it could take up to a decade to recover from. And could happen again. So it's good to have professionals come in and basically teach us how to do it, and then this group will teach the rest of.
I have a quick question. When
Sure.
you say the wineries are okay with spending $200, it's per. per participant?
Well, the idea is that we would be basically one participant per interested winery.
Okay.
We're limited to 32 slots for these 2 sessions. I don't actually know if we can add additional sessions if a winery wanted to pay for more, but this is, I think, where we're just starting our focus.
What we're here for today is for the 2 classes.
Yep.
16 spots each.
So it would be limited to basically one representative per winery at this point. And if we need to fill slots, then wineries would pay additionally for that person. So it's really just the vineyard crew manager. And then they would teach the rest of the crew how to do it moving forward. So it benefits the entire region because if you have 32 people that now know how to prune this way, then they can teach. We have 40 wineries, so that is pretty much representative of the whole ABA. And that's not to say, that some of the winemakers are also consultants for other vineyards and other wineries. And so then they become, we can reach the entire region, ideally, with these 2 sessions.
This is probably on your next slide, but is there a certification, any kind of certification for this and or continuing education?
That's a great question. It's probably we have the Simona and Cirque proposal that they sent.
Okay.
I can't remember off the top of my head, but I do have that. And Ashley has a copy of their original proposal, which I'm sure includes that. Mathieu Fino, who was really the one that spearheaded this because he realized the importance is in France, or he would be here today.
So there's no
Certification.
there's no certification, but there is ongoing options for continued education.
Okay, yeah, I'm just wondering about opportunities to keep people tuned up on their
Yes. Yeah.
skills and being up to date with best practices.
Yes, yeah. So Simona and Cirque is like the mecca of this
Okay.
grading system, which is why we
All right, I'll
asked
trust
to
you.
use them.
That's,
And they're willing to they do this, right? There are other consultants that specifically there's a consultant who went to Virginia Tech who references Simona and Cirque as well, and he uses that pruning method, but he doesn't lead this type of course.
Yeah,
But he offers consulting in the event that a vineyard specifically would want to continue.
Just out of curiosity, how different is this pruning technique from what you typically use?
Yes.
Is it vastly different?
Okay, I'm gonna explain, and it might not sound different to you, but just
come on now.
so when I started learning how to prune, I actually mostly started with this method. With the Simona and Cirque method. But when I sort of learned before that, the goal was always to keep the growth as low as possible. Low. So I wish I could
I can
draw.
give you your canopy.
Okay, so if
vine.
she's the trunk and this is we call it a cordon, you can call it an arm. Every year you get green growth from this permanent structure, and every winter you would cut back this growth, and over time that growth would grow build and build and build and build,
There we go.
and
Thanks for not cutting it off.
the kind of old school way to do it would be to always cut back as close to the cordon as possible. But what that does is, it's just like if you cut your finger, right? If you have one little cut, you might get a scar. But if you keep cutting in that same spot, you're going to build scar tissue. And that's kind of what happens inside the vine. So over time, dead wood builds up, and blocks the flow of nutrients to that specific point in the vine. And so the way that Simona and Cirque works is they don't mind the upward build. So I use this quote for my side project of vines are always growing up, looking for space and looking for light. And we shouldn't, that is sort of like the mantra of Simona and Cirque as well. So they're not afraid to let the vine grow up and up and up, as long as they're keeping the cuts as small as possible. And by doing that, on the youngest wood possible and in the right So like you'd want to cut a joint as opposed to like in the middle of your finger. I guess is sort of the best way. So they would teach the way to make a correct cut in order to limit the trunk, in order to make the plant the most efficient at closing itself off from trunk disease. So looking at the long term, and also improving the efficiency of the plant for the current year's growth. And I know it sounds like I know a lot about a spraying system, but I'm like level 101, and I know that with this, we can get everyone to 101 and up it even further. So understanding why the plant shuts down the way it does, why the plant intakes certain diseases with certain types of cuts versus others, is important to both the short term and both the short term productivity and the long term productivity and longevity of the life of the vineyard.
I don't know anything about pruning, but I have heard a lot about sap flow,
Yes.
and this pruning method increases sap flow, which I imagine is sort of like blood flow
Yes.
into the body. It's like if you cut that off, then
with the governor's disaster declaration, would a winery be able to? I know that's predominantly for like crop loss and then labor associated with that, but is this something that the wineries could like lump in with those claims, or is it exempt?
I believe that is specifically for crop loss.
Okay.
And not for this. And we've also, we've spoken with VDAX. This is specifically a particular issue because VDAX won't cover anything that basically isn't like the finished product.
Right.
So it doesn't take place like before harvest, which this pruning session would happen likely in December, January. So we're looking at a couple months from now. So even the time to turn that around isn't possible.
The timeline's too tight with the USDA support, right?
Yeah. We do have Shannon Horton has been a huge help as far as educating. She's been doing a lot with FSA loans and basically like reporting that. So, the wineries are literally doing everything that they can not to go under, in all honesty. And this is one thing that we can do.
So that the FSA, the TAPS program, those help us recoup money from crop loss and structural loss. So if your vine dies, but this would be to rebuild the existing vineyard that didn't not that didn't get hit, but that didn't die from the freezer. You have a question.
I'm wondering because you represent the Monticello Wine Trail, but doesn't represent all the vineyards in Albemarle, does it, or does it?
So the Monticello Wine Trail is a nonprofit member-based organization, but we are currently the only representatives of the ABA. We have reached out to some vineyard growers. We've actually changed our entire membership structure to include small producers and just growers. So they would be included in this as well. Our goal is also to increase membership, but it's to truly benefit the ABA. So there aren't many wineries that aren't members.
Okay, there are. Okay, and have they reached out to you for any kind of assistance, or could they take advantage of this? Or are you reaching out to them to take advantage of this program?
So Matthew Fino, who sent out the survey, and I learned this from Corey just yesterday, but Ridgely Vineyard, for example, which is owned by Pollock Vineyards, they're a huge grower in Albemarle County.
Consulted by Pollock.
Consulted by Pollock. So yes, they have all been contacted, and some of them are included in those survey results. So we're not trying to gatekeep. The goal is to be inclusive of all of our growers, because there's a lot of mixed, sourcing from vineyards that don't have a tasting room, and there are backyard vineyards that winemakers know about that I have no idea, but they will find them, I promise.
And do you think there are any vineyards that will have or will go completely out of business because of this frost?
I have seen it happening in Northern Virginia. I think it was announced today that 3 are closing that are pretty big landmark ones, including Pearland Cellars, which has been around for as long as I can remember. Yes, I mean, the FSA loan, I sent out an email on behalf of the trail to all of the wineries yesterday for the TAP program, because I think it's getting to that point that, you know, I mean, you can only apply for a loan if you have been denied by a creditor. So I think that if people are reaching out looking for support, then I think it's really that bad. And I mean, I know that this is not an insignificant amount of money, and we, you know, can do our best to fund our piece. And you know, we've shared this is what it costs, and I think that it really will genuinely make a difference in sustaining the region moving forward. I can't speak, you know, for other regions, but hopefully they're doing a similar ask.
So the trail, excuse me, the trail consists of wineries and vineyards, not only Albemarle County, but looking right, so Nelson and Madison and Orange.
It expands mostly is Albemarle County. I would
Right.
say 90% is Albemarle. I think there's one vineyard in Greene County. There is one or two in Fluvanna. Orange is like right on the cusp. Like I think Horton is in technically 2 counties.
And like, yeah, Orange
Yeah.
and Green.
And then
Yeah.
Nelson and Charlottesville, I mean, those are the regions that are covered, but 90% is in Albemarle County.
Right, but you've got some bigger names in some of those. You mentioned Horton, right? So that's big.
Oh yeah.
Right, Veritas, is, we all know down in Nelson Afton. Have you talked to those EDAs as well, those counties? Have you talked to the Convention and Visitors Bureau, since you've already talked about the tourism piece?
We did.
Do you want me to
Sure.
take that one? So we did reach out to some of our partner, you know, adjacent counties. A lot of times it's more challenging for EDAs to come up with funding kind of off cycle out of the blue, especially the smaller counties, which have a much smaller budget overall. And so we did reach out to see if this was something that some of the other counties could come forward on. And because it's not a grant match, it would fall often into a different funding bucket for those localities. And so it there was a lot of expression of like support and hope that something funding could come together to support this, but that it would be a challenge for them to respond to it on the tight turnaround that was necessary to be able to secure the training and on the timeline that they need it. There's a timeliness to the training, I believe, that you need to do it at a certain time of year so that they can do the work on the right sequence for the vines. And so we were able to leverage the fund that we have to be able to bring this forward to you all today. And we certainly wanted to bring it forward to you because of the alignment with the strategic plan.
And Nelson County, for what it's worth, they are doing a lot of work and support in Region 9 with the Virginia Wine Coalition and the Go Virginia grant. And none of the other counties are really large enough to be able to support it. Greene County and Fluvanna do, I mean, they're community partners with us, and we do communicate, I mean, regularly. We have a good relationship with Greene to actually try to help them increase their wineries and their economic development. So those are conversations that are happening. And I mean, the CACVB for this just didn't have tourism dollars to put specifically towards pruning. But Courtney did email me today and wish us luck. So that was nice. She's in Portland, Oregon, I think.
And the CACVB typically doesn't have funds available for this type of support, in fairness to the way that body is structured.
Quick question, you may have explained it already in relation to timing and urgency. This is the field of pruners that will be pruning for what season? Are we pruning for this? You said it.
2027. So we would do this program in this December of 2026. The company is based out of Italy, and so they travel the world and do this. It's not, I mean, this is a very niche, like very expert. Like, I think they have, a representative in California that would likely come here, but it's no, small undertaking. So we're probably pretty late in the game to try to get them to come here at this point in the season. But yeah, pruning, this would happen in December, and then pruning would be ongoing through, February, March, and then April, early April is typically when there's bud break. So in Virginia, we've learned that's bad. There was the Mother's Day frost a handful of years ago, but we've never seen, I mean, the frost and then freeze. It's the freeze that this year was significant.
Yeah.
Sorry, this slide, I guess at this point is fairly redundant.
If that's the case, let me follow up then with something else. So if they come in from Napa, assume they're in Napa or somewhere there, what sort of ongoing support are they offering? And I'm sure that's in the proposal, but I don't remember seeing it. So
I should
is there
have,
something
The
ongoing?
proposal outlines the educational programming and what it includes as far as the 3 classes of 2 cohorts.
it's a 3-day intensive workshop, and then
I scanned it earlier. There is an excessive mention of ongoing added value or extended access to ongoing education, but that could exist. It's just not in the proposal.
if that exists, I feel like at that point it would likely become our responsibility to follow up. I think the goal, as we mentioned, is to train the trainers, and no one in our region has ever learned this or had. I mean, some of the bigger wineries have the capacity, to hire these folks to come in, but the 2 sessions of 16 people is their minimum.
It does dive into a follow-up spring webinar to focus on the mitigation management long term.
Just an observation, but I mean, it's $625 a business to really impact them and bring this training that they can carry on. When you bring it down to that level, then you get to impact 32 different local companies for $625. It seems very reasonable ask.
And speaking of dollars, you had mentioned the sales tax, how much it brings in, because you mentioned the 1.4 billion in tourism, 1.3 billion, pardon me, tourism annually, but you mentioned the sales tax number.
That was from the CACVB. Hold on. That I pulled from their website somewhere. So I have basically 587 million in visitor spending in Albemarle County. That was from 2024. 7,172 tourism supported jobs. 48.5 million in local tourism tax revenue was what I pulled from the CACVB.
48 what?
0.5 million in local tourism tax revenue.
We all know they go to the wineries.
Yeah, I mean, sales tax.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Yeah, sell it plastic.
You gotta get the heads in the beds, right?
Yes.
Yeah. But
Just so you guys know, we supported an initiative like this for honey, and they brought samples. If you want a bug,
No,
I'm
just
saying.
Give you something to prove off.
I mean, you gotta all learn in this whole thing.
I'm just saying,
We're talking about
we could definitely throw an economic development party.
You riled up that corner.
We are not asking you to give us wine.
There is an industry social at Veritas on Tuesday from 5 to 7 p.m. If anyone wants to show up, we'll just let them know that they may need to expect a couple of extra guests.
Of course.
But yeah, I mean, like we have been saying, I think, healthy vineyards produce healthy wineries, and healthy wineries create memorable visitor experiences. And when we invest in vineyard resilience, we're also investing in the long-term strength of our regional economy. I mean, if the wineries don't have any wine to sell and it's ugly when you look outside and they're flailing businesses, then it's going to be a huge negative impact on the entire region, because it is a huge driver of, just getting people here and saving the agricultural land. I mean, this is farmland, and these are, we're now onto the 2nd generation farmers for some of these wineries. Horton is 3rd generation. And so, to keep that going, and it's sad that they're struggling, but it's a hard business.
Last question, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
This is going for the board, that's why.
Oh, you gotta get smart. Okay,
I've got
I got you.
notes on
Oh,
this.
you got all the money.
What was my question? Without this help and without them doing anything, what's the devastation from the frost and freeze? And you said the frost was one thing, but the freeze is what did it.
It was the both and. It happened basically over the course of 3 dates in April.
Right.
And the first 2 was just the frost. It was the freeze. Like you can see, well, I should have done a cross comparison.
Well, what I'm wondering is the amount of total wineries that could go under, or maybe not under, but really diminish the money.
Would that be in that survey?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that would be in the survey because we're not really there yet.
Mhm.
That is going to be if
Potential.
because of like the devastation this growing season. They don't have any grapes to make wine, which means that in 2026 harvest, like people aren't making wine. There's no grapes to make wine from because they were killed in the frost.
So all of them or majority?
I would say 90%. It's probably a 90% loss across our region was hit the worst. Albemarle County and Shenandoah Valley were hit. I mean, we had the highest loss of anyone in the state.
The narrative that you hear is total devastation.
Yeah.
Total loss.
Right, but just to be clear, pruning practice is not gonna save the whole plant and all the vineyards. It's a gentler method to work with what we've got left to encourage the vine to grow rather than having a situation where people are using old pollarding type hard pruning methods where they're likely to damage more of the already impacted vines.
Correct. Even though they've had a crop loss this year, that may or may not impact the vine. Some people have lost vines that they will not recover, which is why they're doing things through other methods that I'm not familiar with. But
So-
like what you mentioned earlier, and you can speak probably
But-
more to this.
You put it well, like this frost freeze event, whether or not you had a total loss of fruit. So you like we keep saying like vineyards are not going to be producing wine this year, and what we're asking for is to prune for this coming year. And the structure, the way that this freeze hit impacted not just this year, it impacted the structure of the vine. So we need to rebuild with a better pruning system in order. It's not going to stop a freeze event from the future, but it will hopefully help us rebuild faster and be better equipped for if this happens again.
Repair the vines for like
Yeah.
better, more vigorous future growth. It's like, I don't know, after COVID, we all needed. Yeah, I mean, it's like this was like that event for vineyards in our area, and so we all had to build ourselves back up, and we learned how to do that. And I wish we had experts to guide us along the way.
All right. I think we've had, everybody's been able to express their thoughts, so do we need to take action on this?
There's a motion.
All
If
right.
so desired.
Yes.
So, do we have somebody willing to make a motion?
I move the Economic Development Authority of Albemarle County, Virginia, adopt a resolution approving a grant for the Monticello Wine Trail contract with Simonette and Cirque for pruning training for wineries in the Monticello American Viticultural Area, noted as attachment 4B on the materials list. Did I need to read that? Sorry.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Is there any discussion? All right. All right. All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? All right. There we go.
Thank you. On behalf of 40 plus wineries and however many other growers are out there.
Now that we voted on it, the one comment I would make is that you mentioned somebody from Virginia Tech Extension. I don't know whether you could get that person to participate as well again.
Yeah.
I'm
sure
that would be a great way to make sure there was your training.
Virginia Tech, but charging full price.
Yeah.
Yes.
And PVCC, I don't know if they're worth it for this, but I'll stop talking. this
All
year.
right.
And I'll just say that Tracy is new-ish in her position with the Monticello Wine Trail, and it has just been a really wonderful asset from our office to connect with the broader wineries. It's everyone's busy, and so it's hard sometimes to have a place to get everyone's attention through. And so I think this opportunity coming forward is probably a lot to do with that level of organization that's happening at the wineries right now. And so I want to just recognize Tracy for the great work that she's doing, and thank you.
That's what I'm here for. So if anyone needs to connect with any of the wineries, please let me know. And just admin@monticellowinetrail.com.
I'll be happy after the meeting to share the survey results as well as Tracy's contact information. If anyone needs.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Next, informational section of the agenda. Catalytic project ideas discussion continued. So, what the EDO staff did after our last discussion was take some of the feedback that they got and explored the ideas. And so Emily's going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about it a little.
Awesome. Thank you. So up on the screen are the 6 idea areas that we recorded at the last discussion, and we put just a little bit of, it's like bouncing. This is
I
fun.
was just editing on the fly.
And so Avery and I will walk through just a little bit of detail about each of these. So we took what you heard and we tried to put a little bit more around it. And I think the hope for today's discussion is, if there's an item on here that you all would like to say, maybe let's leave that alone for now, or if there's, a handful that you as a group say, let's keep going with these as sort of an initial focus, that would be great feedback for us. But with that, I'll just let Avery start us off. Oh, Ashley's going to do the first one.
All right, so the first one we have, can you go ahead and advance this?
Sorry.
Technically.
Oh, it's the delay.
The first catalytic project that we had proposed and discussed is to support our agribusiness and food processing customers. And we've batted this concept around in several different
That's nice.
in several different iterations. I'll just keep going.
Yes.
And the Beacon Kitchen is located here in our area. We had the opportunity to tour that facility a few months back, and they are a great resource to support the businesses here in our community that operate under their shared kitchen. They have infrastructure. Penny's Imperfect Pizza that we've supported, they operate out of that facility, and among 17 other member businesses, and I know they're doing a lot of support there. And the Bel Air Farm project that we had Michelle from Bel Air Farms come to discuss the cold link sharing. That's another project that we are working with regarding shared infrastructure. We worked as staff just to ascertain if there were other concepts that might be attractive for the authority to support or involve themselves in. Shared space like county canneries. There's a locality in Prince Edward County, excuse me, my throat is dry, where it's essentially the same concept as the Beacon Kitchen, but with more of a production on a cannery and incorporating the commercial kitchen aspect of that operation. And that just allows users they could be home producers or food businesses to ultimately get their value added and produce their product so that they can thrive. The chicken, it's not as funny if you can't see it, but the chicken egg USDA case study out of Goochland serves again as another commercial kitchen and incubator that offers beginning entrepreneurship programs and business marketing services and certifications. Director Storm shared an example of a program that's done in another area that I would equate it to a similar concept as the business essentials training that the Small Business Development Center provides for their participants in their their programming, where it ultimately is a 8-week kind of intensive cohort of training and marketing support for food entrepreneurs that are new to the sector, new to their business, to get them the fundamental training and education they need to be successful. So those are just some roundabout ideas that we've batted around.
So the next topic we looked at was a no. Oh, sorry.
One thing to tap on with, I think there's an opportunity, if we can find the right piece, to reach out to our legislators in Richmond. I think they would be excited about being able to help the agricultural side of things, Delegate Lawford, Leader Deeds in particular. That's there. The second is that Habitat is talking about a commercial kitchen going in at Southwood as part of one of the future phases. Ideally, I would expect that was designed for their residents, but their residents are county residents, so there may be an opportunity there as well. And I know they're always coming to the county, as the county has been a good partner to them over the years. But this is an opportunity, and maybe an opportunity as well in this area. So I'm sorry.
No,
That's
not
okay.
at all.
No.
Another
Yeah.
concept, the commercial kitchen incubator scenario is one that isn't unfamiliar to us, but that we have heard from our agribusiness customers and food processing customers that access to retail space that's affordable and convenient and safe for their food to be transported is a need that they do see existing in this market. Michelle, that was here from Bel Air Farm, indicated that it's challenging to transport their crops and their products to a farmer's market and then turn back around, get them back to the farm where they're housed, because that causes food safety concerns. And as we know, those things can be really devastating agriculturally. So that's another concept that could be considered.
Is there an agribusiness roundtable of some sort of leaders in this economic sector who are looking out for initiatives and plans to move the sector forward?
In our region specifically?
Yeah.
Or I would imagine that the Farm Bureau and the co-op have certain levels of support that are there. I'm not personally aware of anything that exists as far
Where
as
I'm going with that is they would know best what they need and how we could help. For us on the outside to look in and pretend that we know what they need is probably the wrong process. That the right process would be to convene that leadership and on behalf of the EDA and say, we want to help, what can we do?
That's a great
point. I would propose a process like that. I think it will yield more than the dozen of us sitting around speculating.
Right. Back in May, the city and the county convened farmers and producers and food processors across both of our regions here as staff, invited the Small Business Development Center, the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. Is there anybody else involved? I can't recall off the top of my head. But,
The EDP was here, right?
Yes, thank you. The EDP as well was here. And this is where we got a lot of this feedback from the producers in our area about the challenges that they are experiencing that are leaving gaps in their market.
But again, if we're looking for catalytic projects,
And
for
that-
a small amount of money, we could convene a group and give them lunch and do it upright and find out from them what they think they need. And it would cost us, a couple $1,000 for the day.
Yeah, so I think the purpose of today's discussion is for us to share a little bit more about the idea and then see if there's direction from the EDA to take any forward or drop any off the list. And so I think any of these would have a number of implementation steps before we would be looking to actually fund an actual project. So I think that would be a good implementation step if the EDA was interested in pursuing this one further.
sounds like something to put.
Any other for this one? All right. So the next topic was a no or low interest loan fund. This would look very similar to a lot of the other grant matches and types of agreements that you guys are familiar with and I've seen have come before you guys over the last few years. I reached out to CIC and CVSBDC to see if they would have any appetite for assisting with the admin portion, because that would be really what it would be about. They would still come before you guys, but then we would have them administer whether it be the reporting and the actual money handling of this, so that you guys directly weren't the ones, or the staff wasn't the ones administering it exactly. They were receptive to it. Their immediate question was how much and who they want to give it to, so they definitely are interested. I didn't have enough information to give it to them up front, with the understanding that, this isn't necessarily a $1 million+ loan that we're giving to someone, but it might be in smaller amounts. But they're more definitely interested in coming back and hearing more from that. And then we have some examples of more successful ones here down at the bottom that you guys can read through.
I think you can see, with these two examples, there's no wrong way to do it. You could do a no interest loan. You could do a low interest loan. There's value to both. I think it's partially the EDA would need to decide, is this a small revenue generator as well, or is it truly just a way to help facilitate a flow of capital? But the good news on this one is that we do have two partners who would be willing to administer, which, again, there's details to be worked out. But
any thoughts or comments on that one? All right.
Director Cox's idea. So the fill site is an idea that we would identify a property that could be a strong candidate for future development that needs fill. So Albemarle County has beautiful mountains and hills and valleys, and every site has their own level of bits of that. And when you're doing development, you often wind up with a site that is not perfectly flat, but has either a valley to fill or a hill to be cut. And so the idea here is that the county could identify a site that has future development potential and needs fill to create a flat surface to do development on. That the partnership opportunity here would be to operate a clean fill receiving site. Clean fill means something in the regulations. If anyone has follow-up questions, I will not answer them. But I think other people in the room probably could. Early conversations with permitting staff indicated that, there's a lot of details to be worked out, but that there is a regulatory path forward for a number of different scenarios. And so that was sort of the big question that I think we left the last meeting with. And so we feel like there's some good options there that we could explore further if there was a willingness by the EDA to do so. And the benefit of this would be that, as I mentioned, there's a lot of sites in the county that need to remove fill, and the places where you can deposit fill are often farther away, and there's a large expense associated with having fill trucked off your site to land in one of these fill accepting sites. It also requires a lot of really heavy dump trucks to transport the fill from one site to the other. And so there's a carbon footprint associated with that, of course. And so having a site in the county to bring fill could be a net benefit from a number of different perspectives. The net benefit to the EDA could be that, again, if you have an appropriate site that has future development potential, as the fill is being deposited into the site eventually, you would bring it up to a level site, and then you would be in a position to then market that site for development purposes. And there's a number of different ways that we could explore how that would go. But the idea is, instead of paying to import fill eventually, you could build it up over time incrementally while supporting other development projects that are happening in the county.
Andrew, with your experience as a church worker,
Very sweet way of saying it.
would you say, what's your impression? Because my impression was that we have a lot of cut sites. Is there a lot of fill
I think there's
material available?
Yeah, I think there's fill. Drive at any of the active development sites in the county, and you're going to see a monster stockpile, and it's sitting there because it is expensive to haul that off.
Yeah.
It is when you're hauling it to areas, you know, the old thing was you'd go find a farmer that had a gully in a field and say, hey, I'll make it flat for you, and the farmer said, great.
Okay.
And then that runoff, it was not permitted, it was running into streams, it was going into streams. And so this also, you know, from an ecological perspective, allows the county to control, okay, this is going into a permitted, professionally operated fill site that it's not going to somebody's farm out in green and into a stream. It's going to a place where you know it keeps that material here, and then over time, instead of saying, okay, we want to develop this on a 10-month time frame, okay, well, you're going to have to go buy quarry material. That's very expensive. Versus, okay, we can develop this over a 2-year time frame and take the fill as it comes, provided that it meets certain proctors and that it is clean fill. But then you're getting to that point much more affordably over time, so that the net investment is much lower. And you get to that pad-ready site, and you're already, you know, a tier up in the VEDP's readiness program. And then if you know, ostensibly have an engineered plan that you're working towards, you also probably have a utility plan. You're working maybe that in concert. But yeah, the thought, I think there's plenty of opportunity.
Okay, it starts with the fact that we have hills.
Yep.
And we have to cut the tops off. That's some of them off, and that generates often more cut. And now it's saying we need to put that cut somewhere, so we need to find sites to put it.
Yeah, the more often situation we find when we're handed set of site plans is that we need to get fill off the site versus bring it in.
Okay.
And with this, if I can.
Sure.
Okay, would this involve, different sites throughout the county? Cause I know one of the concerns that we're currently going through is that, you know, with the trucks bringing it, going. to
The
sites.
idea with this is there would be one site that would be established as the fill receiving site.
Okay,
The construction projects that would be bringing fill to that site would be from all over.
so let's say you've got fill, clean fill coming in from Keswick over to Crozet, cause that's where the fill site is. And then from there, somebody in Earlysville, remain nameless, wants that.
Just
Who's Sharpie? Then you'll truck it back over there.
I
Do you
think
see
the
what
thought was that it's not sending and receiving, but that it's just receiving.
It's just receiving, but then what do you do with that fill? You've got this mountain of fill.
But you're working towards a site plan.
Right.
So essentially you get a site plan built and you're filling in an area working towards a final grade.
Okay, so if you have individual farmers who have craters or, you know.
I'm sorry, so they wouldn't be involved in this. Sorry.
No.
That would be outside the church.
so like North Fork has some sites that broader ridges, and
Right.
then they drop off pretty quick and there's some gullies that aren't in floodplains that
Okay.
fill dirt could be used to
Okay, so
expand
it's-
that flat area to accommodate whatever.
Understood, so this would only be for development sites.
Yes.
This would not be to benefit other sites like
Correct,
agricultural.
because in order to do it, you would need a proctor that is from an engineer saying this is this type of material and we're bringing it, because otherwise you would, if you brought in unproctored material, you have a question mark about placing that fill, and then future development, you look at a lot of sites that, back in the day, they were pushing stumps and cars and who knows what.
Right.
And so that would be, hey, here's a site that you can build and we know exactly where it's gone in, and it's gone into this compaction because we put it in this way.
Right, no, I understand that, but
Okay.
I'm saying if you've got one location to put fill there, and then that fill will now go to maybe other developments that need it, like at North Point. correct?
No, that's
No.
not.
That's what am I wrong?
It's not a transfer spot. It's a permanent resident place.
One spot.
One spot. So this would be a county piece of property that needs fill. It would go there to get it to a point where it could then be developed. And then you might find another spot.
I think, that's the key. Is if you fill that way and you get to the grade, you establish it, you solidify it, and then it's like, okay, well, there's this other county in parcel that we move on to that one. I don't think you want to get in the business
I
of
see.
Brokering.
in and out, and that gets
Okay,
messy
okay.
very fast.
That clarifies that, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
So I think it's an interesting idea. I think there's a lot more overhead to this project than maybe some of the other ones. So
But I think it's really, if we can identify some land that would work, then it probably makes sense to start going
It's
down.
tied to the whole site readiness.
Yeah.
idea.
And that would be something staff would do, figure out the sites that would benefit from that. That is,
If the EDA wanted to move forward with this one, that would be the next round of work that would happen. And we specifically would probably not do that work. We would probably come to the EDA with a request to bring on services to help us do that work.
You have an item on your matrix for that. You have an item on your, that you're gonna cover.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
The project.
All right.
Okay. So then, right here it is. So cited. We talked about site identification characterization last time. So I cite they're related, but they're different. So site identification is really just saying, right now I know the 4 to 5 sites that the county has that are in the county, so not necessarily county owned, that are large scale, have a willing landowner that is interested in seeing economic development to happen there, that are of a size that makes sense to show when prospects request land to look at in the county. What I don't know is if we fill those in pretty quickly, which is our hope, where next? And so site identification is mostly a computer GIS analysis to look at what are those next good opportunities. We probably need a mix of medium and small and large sites. And so what do those look like based on industry needs? Do we have light industrial sites that are large enough near the right infrastructure to meet the needs of our target sectors? And those are a little bit different from each other.
And does everything have to be on 29?
Right. Yeah.
Let's work to that.
And so site identification is really is that analysis, geospatial analysis of what do we have where and how do those things stack. That is something that we actually initiated a couple of weeks ago at the staff level because it's part of the strategic plan and we knew that it was something that needed to be done. So we are hopeful that will be done by the end of the calendar year. And what that will do is return 8 to 10 good opportunities. All of them might not be exactly near-term opportunities. And so what you would do once you know what your opportunities are, you could choose to go into site characterization, which is selecting one or more sites from that list to say, okay, let's hire an engineer to really build the roadmap of here are all the things that need to happen in order to get this to a more advanced tier readiness on the state system. And so that is an area specifically where I think the EDA could be a real helpful partner. And that would be both in helping us sort of think through what those handful of good sites to put forward into characterization would be, and then also helping as a funding partner for us to be able to undertake some of those opportunities. There are state grant programs to support that as well. But there usually are local match requirements. And so the EDA could be a funding partner in that as well. And so that's sort of that one in summary.
That's a good one. I think if done correctly with the base data, there can be a lot of usefulness in this study in terms of the metrics of impacts, tax revenue projections, all the above to see what true capacity we actually have for economic development of the land we have.
Has the consultant already been hired?
The consultant for site identification has been hired, and they're still grabbing data at this point. So I don't have any early indications of progress other than they're building data sets.
Who is it?
Timmons.
Timmons?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's who we worked with through Go Virginia
Mm-hmm.
and CV Penn.
Mm-hmm.
They were very good.
Great. All right. Do you want to do this one? Do you want me to do this one?
That's up to you. I can start Indy and
Yeah. Okay.
So this was the business attraction question that we've all asked of, okay, if one company is coming here, what are the supplementary or complementary industries that come along with it? What can we do to attract those so that it's more enticing for potential other big businesses? So, for example, for the example I chose here of biopharma and AZ, for example, so the other industries that would go with that would be a lot of the certified packaging organizations that go with actually packaging all their products together, as well as warehousing space and cold storage. We found during a lot of this stuff is we're already doing a lot of this work already and with their strategic plan and our usual day-to-day activities. So at this particular time, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to have you guys carve it out specifically in your funding plan to set aside some money specific to this activity. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, however, the EDA has and always will have a really important role as we're talking about a specific, landing a specific deal. And you all were a big help through the AstraZeneca recruitment on providing some funding to help us with the road that was necessary for that one. And so, our thought was if the EDA agrees, would be staff does a lot of this stuff on the day to day. We'll continue to do that. We'll continue to ramp that up. And then, so instead of a specific carve out by the EDA, continue to play the role that you can and do and should play as we get to really like that deal closing bit where your financing can be really helpful to us.
Yes, exactly.
Hey,
Yeah.
Emily, not to sound like a broken record, but I keep looking at this on Google AI. Only 5% of Albemarle County's land, about 35 square miles, is open and designated for development.
Hadn't heard that before.
Well, yeah, you may have heard it. Because the other day, I was sharing, I was on 29 and I didn't know if I was in Albemarle County or Fairfax County. There's really no difference. But if you go over to Jose, there's nobody there. There's no humans. So I'm wondering. Well, yeah, none that I can see. I mean, what I don't know. Are we going to develop just like up and down 29, and that's the case? Where else gets developed? Or 5% just seems like untenable to me.
I think the site identification study is going to be really helpful for us to talk about the remaining sites that are still undeveloped.
Because like roughly 695 square miles is strictly designated for rural, and commercial growth is heavily restricted. So I'm thinking, how much? Let me ask you this: how much has been developed of the 5%? So we're really only talking about maybe 2% of the acreage.
That I'm not sure about, but I will tell you the development areas are Crozet, are Pantops, and 29 North. Those are the development areas, and they will continue to be developed. We're going, but we have not moved a line.
Right?
I do predict that in the next, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, that the development line will be moved up 29 North. That's what I tell my constituents. It's going to move up 29 North all the way to Murfreesville, but that's going to take time. It's not happening right now because the board said there's the line.
You got a tough job, lady.
The site identification study is going to be really helpful for us to identify
Back to
the
slide
remaining-
number 22.
Okay. This one's you.
Well, and to wrap this up in a bow, storytelling is one of the other potential catalytic projects that we have proposed and discussed, and this is pretty self-explanatory. Ultimately, we have been told that Albemarle County is a wonderful place and everything's fantastic. We just do we could do a better job of telling that story. And there are several examples of campaigns that other markets have participated in. And essentially what this would look like is working together to create a campaign to more effectively tell our story, tell the Albemarle story. And these campaigns are typically professionally produced, and we would work with an agency to highlight the community's strengths and attract businesses and talent through unified branding and those things would obviously be determined based on a consultant coming in and working with the EDA and staff to determine what those messages are that we're not getting out the best way. And they can go through many different channels. You could do traditional advertising. There's digital marketing. There's LinkedIn posts. There's targeted advertising campaigns, and ultimately it just depends on what we feel like is the best way to move forward with that story.
And these are not primarily local driven messaging. This would be messaging that would be targeted more towards the site selection world.
Workforce, essentially. Go ahead.
Trade, you know,
shows, yeah.
trade type.
Demographic targeting.
Yeah, targeting.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but there's a sequencing. First, you have to have the sites before you market the sites. So there's
Sure.
a sequencing
Sure,
here that
yeah.
we need to pay attention to.
Or you could be attracting workforce, or
Right.
you could be, attracting a different industry. Yeah, absolutely, different industry ecosystems, things of that nature.
And this one, storytelling can feel a little softer of the things that we talked about today, cleaner than certainly some of the other things we talked about today.
Phil saying, please be talking to you.
Please record my shocked face.
It's a great meeting to have bad audio.
I'm upset.
You're not going to take that lead.
But storytelling was identified in both our strategic plan, but also the Innovation Corridor Strategic Roadmap, which is a regional look at opportunities that we have to sort of grow. For us to be selected, folks have to be aware that we exist, and so it is important work, even though it can feel a little bit more of a flourish than I need to have.
All right, so I'm going to.
We'll bring back up this. It's on delay. I can see it.
So I'll share my thoughts and then everybody can share those. It seems to me that agribusiness, no low interest loan fund and site identification are maybe the ones that we focus on, with the Phil site being kind of depending on what we find as available to do, is sort of our follow on there. That's the way it's appearing to be, the business attraction. And I think the storytelling kind of fits with the business attraction piece as well, that I see those as being things that we could support when the EDO comes to us and says, here's the things we can do. So, I mean, that's sort of how it's falling out in my mind, because I could see how, with Frank's idea in terms of getting some feedback on agribusiness and trying to use, we could be the convening and then help pull that together. I mean, the fund, that's obviously something we've got money to do. It's just coming up with the structure and figuring out, and then, site identification and classification. But that's the way I see it. But others can.
Just a quick question on the time. What is the timeline? Are these like 27 projects, or like what, like next 5 years? Like what kind of time structure are we talking about?
I think it's up to you all. I think the frame that this conversation came forward in was the something that the EDA wanted to take on coming out of the adoption of the 5-year economic development strategic plan of how does the EDA help implement the plan. So in my mind, this could be not a 1-year plan, but thinking about it multi-year.
Sure.
And then just recognizing that you all have a fund balance that is around $1 million with a replenishment rate of a bit over $100,000 a year. And so I think one of the goals for this was, you don't want to spend it all in one shot, not knowing if or when there'll be a transformational infusion of cash back into the EDA. But how could you have a couple of projects that you want to go after, and then a couple of other things that may be more decision-making framework of, when we get a solicitation from a community organization like we had earlier today, help the EDA think through, is this a good fit or not a good fit? Sometimes when we're always reviewing things as one-offs, it can feel hard to think strategically. One of the benefits of the EDA and its powers is that you can absorb an ad hoc one-off request. Other parts of government, it's a lot harder to quickly respond to a financial need that emerges. And so wanting to put you all in a good position, a strong position to make those decisions, knowing that you're one of the places that people can go when there's a timeliness for a need.
I would agree with Dawn. I mean, all these things are in the context of all the steps in the dance. But the lead is obviously demonstrated by starting it, and it's going to be done maybe by the end of the year, is the site identification and classification. But again, beyond that, I think that type of study can be expanded and could have add-on parts that lead us to a body of data and metrics that help us make decisions and all these other things. So I would say that's a priority for me.
Yeah, I think the site identification is the natural place for us to begin. A specific question, if you don't mind. Will the Timmins Group only be looking at sites in the development area, or will they be looking at the entire county?
Their analysis will include, it's based off of zoning and land use. And so that means they will primarily be looking only in the development area. Their desktop analysis, so just the computers work, will also then likely pull in some of the industrially zoned properties that sit outside the development area. That is not to say that means that that's the final report. I think the data will be the data. And then there'll be a level of analysis that staff
Well, let me
will
explain
apply.
where I'm going with that. B has implied that the development area could be expanded over the next 10, 20 years. If the Timmins Group identified opportunities outside the development area, it might move that process along both chronologically and targeted at areas where there is potential return to the county. So that would imply that Timmins should look outside the development area, maybe not at the same level of analysis, but I would think, and B, you can comment on this, that could help a 5-year project or a 10-year project become a 3-year or an 8-year project if there are opportunities identified that the Board of Supervisors can look at very specifically.
No, that is true, and remember, all this can change depending upon who's on the board.
Yeah,
So,
obviously.
yeah, I mean, in that.
But just assuming what we currently know, that might be a worthwhile thing for Timmins to at least dip their toes in.
Right.
So they will be looking at where, again, if you think about it as like, I had an encyclopedia as a child where you could overlay the clear sheets, transparencies, yeah, to layer on the systems. So they'll be layering on things like, you know, their goal is to put us in a position to get to site characterization, and site characterization is the things that we can do, you know, with not insurmountable levels of work, but some additional work would put this site in a good position to be marketable. And so they'll be layering both acreage, but also, you know, zoning and land use, which is going to eliminate, you know, as of today. But then they'll also layer on, you know, where is their public water and sewer? That's going to pull off the rural
just
area.
to use B's example, I mean, B's looking at north on 29 going up towards Ruckersville as a potential area. Well, if Timmins found sites along that corridor that had a real potential for development, that would feed in very nicely with what B is saying the board will be looking at perhaps in the future.
May
May.
be looking at, for the record, yes, but at least it would give us additional information.
Yes.
The reason why I say 29 north, that's where the infrastructure is. You're not going to get development of rural areas without water and sewer. That's the criteria for the development area. So you need water and sewer, and so it's natural for it to go up 29 north, out in the middle of nowhere, that would not be a development area because it'd be on septic. So,
There's a progression to this, that's what I was talking about, the framework for that, setting up
Mm-hmm.
the add-ons and ability, if we have the right framework of thought and analysis, you know, that is a question that's gonna continue to come up with this group and the others. It's also the opposite side of that, there's fears about that, right? And there's folks, the public, the constituents, the people out there, all of us that live in these rural areas that would be concerned about said concepts without understanding the actual impacts and appropriateness, right, of adjacent land use and appropriate uses that could be looked into, and those questions through that process could be answered. But I think there's a progression of that we need to do that. I think first we need to see what we got. We're starting a trail hike with a map, and we haven't even got to the first viewpoint. We don't even know what we're looking at. But with the right framework, I think all these things are smart to do. We should be doing it, so we have a total understanding of our capacity overall based on our citizens' comfort level with economic development, the type, the style, and scale, and what it actually means, so that we have, like we talked from the beginning, the right fit, the right size economic development for Albemarle County.
correct. Right. I wouldn't rush into it and do the development area, but certainly if there's enough money or time, you know, if there's something that pops up, I mean, you could do that. But, I mean, yeah.
And just a quick question, the site identification, does that include potential redevelopment sites as well?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So they'll be looking at kind of like a cost factor of how much is the value of the current improvement. And then there's a sort of a relative line where you say, you know, this is an underperforming property and would and could be a candidate for redevelopment if the landowner was willing to do so. And there's a couple of properties in the county where there's a building on the property, and it's likely that a future tenant, and it's for sale. It's likely that a future purchaser would want something else there because the age of the structure is just not aligned with sort of current expectations for what that building product looks like. And so that would be another one where you would probably flag that as a redevelopment opportunity.
All right. So do you have, what do you think we need?
I'm going to say it back to you. How about that?
All right.
All right. So it sounded like Chair Long's suggestion of the agribusiness food processing, the loan program, and the site identification, which could lead to the fill site, would be the primary focus initially. And staff can sort of scope out what some next steps on those would be.
You know,
Just
one
a
idea.
comment, are you aware of any locality that has done the fill site in the way you kind of described it?
Not a locality, but Rivanna Solid Waste Authority has used it to fill in an area permitted, used it to fill in an area on the backside of the Ivy transfer station. That was a headache for them and has gone really successfully.
I just find it a fascinating idea, but it would certainly help to have a model that we could learn from, because inventing it on our own, we might not be able to do it, or it might take forever. But coming up with a model of somebody who has done something similar, it's the most innovative thing we've discussed. Now, whether it'll work, who knows? But it's incredibly innovative.
I wonder if we could invite Rivanna to come talk about it.
Sure.
If the EDA would be interested in hearing
We're always
from,
happy to have guests.
yeah, and that public body to public body.
How can you beat the EDA and the business attraction isn't number one?
Because you have to have product first before you attract. Site before attract.
I think some of that business attraction is already ongoing. I mean, we do have some sites right? Ravenna Futures is not completely spoken for. So some of that's going to be ongoing in that area, much like the storytelling will be ongoing, because you need storytelling to attract the business to the sites you have. But I think we're all in agreement, we need more sites. And we need them in locations that make sense for businesses and locations that make sense for the county.
And to your point, Ravenna Futures is what was in my head when we talked about the fill site, because you look at the topography of those sites that the county owns there, and they need fill. And so that was that in my head. It's like that's where you're going to have large scale construction, industrial development over the next 3 to 5 years with AstraZeneca. So that is next door. The 29 corridor with North Point, David Mitchell is building how many more homes there that the Delmore Village and Belvedere, like they are growing, and so like that was that north side.
I was thinking the Brook Hill site on the west side.
Sure.
Yeah.
Where there are a lot of potential competing demands for that site for both the county from any number of reasons, from the school division to county transfer stations.
That mountain of
There's market
Brook
leads.
Hill was there for quite a while.
It's kind of a bowl.
And we have a site ready location for the Olive Garden.
An endless soup, salad, and breadstick bowl.
Only if you have your ID. Alright, so,
Do you?
Is that their corporate? Is it their?
I don't know what you're doing.
you obviously don't spend enough time on social media here today. So,
Oh, is this the pasta pass?
yeah,
Okay.
it's come up as part of the city.
Yeah, right. ID.
Discussion, you gotta have an ID.
You gotta have an ID.
Why should you have an ID to vote for discussion?
Oh.
Yeah, I'm
alright.
strictly working during
And
workday.
the last thing I'll add to that discussion is, at some point when we had, I think our presentation, maybe it was Lynchburg, and they talked about subcommittees.
Hmm.
And we were like, well, maybe we don't really need subcommittees. Some of these ideas might be actually really good for that, where we could say, get some people to focus on each thing and then come back. So, staff report.
Great. We are mindful of time. I really want to recognize the 2 EDO interns that are in the audience with us today. And Neil.
One older than the other.
Oh my God. That's amazing. So we have Aoife Chow and Mun Patel, both at the University of Virginia. Aoife's a grad student in the Baton School of Public Policy. I'm going to let you guys do it. Would you say one sentence about yourself?
Yeah, I'm a public policy student at UVA Baton, so I'm going to my second year.
I'm going to my 3rd year at the University of Virginia, and I'm studying economics.
Interns can be a mixed bag. These 2 have been a real powerhouse. They have been a real powerhouse of like, here, run with this, and they turn around things quickly and really robustly, and it's been really wonderful to host them this summer.
And they suffered through an escape room team building event.
Yes, our favorite.
We all made it
BPO
out.
hazing.
Yes.
They're really good at sippers if you need anybody. So just wanted to introduce you all to them. And then I'll just hit a couple things. If you've not downloaded your Central Virginia Innovation Corridor Strategic Roadmap, you should. It's only 172 pages. The executive summary is only 17. And it's a great read on some of the regional opportunities. The value of an exercise like this is that we are a smaller metro, like Charlottesville, Albemarle. We're a smaller metro than a lot of other metros when you rank us nationally. When we think regionally and when we act regionally and plan regionally, we start to have the workforce numbers, the economic output numbers, the talent opportunities, the site opportunities that start to get attention from the folks that we're hoping to attract here. And so this planning exercise is a really robust, we've been calling it sort of the textbook. It's a really robust textbook for what our real strategic advantages are and some really near-term line of sight opportunities that we could choose to go after to help us tell that story a bit more strongly. And here's some of the, on the slide are some of the specific opportunities that the study illuminated for us. And it was a great exercise really just as a region to try to work together to think how we can be bigger than any individual locality in a way that has not happened in some time. So a lot more to do on that front, but a really important first step. And you all helped fund that, so thank you. The Opportunity Zone program, Chair Long may have some memory of the Opportunity Zone program that launched several years ago. It's a federal program to help attract investment in low-income census tracts with different levels based on population characteristics. Virginia is leading an engagement right now with localities to rank the income eligible census tracts at every locality to be able to respond to a request from the federal government to put forward sort of a priority list of census tracts statewide. There's a couple of key differences with this round than the prior round. One is they want to have fewer opportunity zones, so it's not only income driven, but there's this prioritization process. You can see on the graphic here the income eligible census tracts that we have in the county, mostly north, but also where the university sits are the two sort of in the center. And then in the one at the bottom is more encompasses the Southwood area. Our staff worked with community development, housing, and real estate to help sort of come up with that ranking that we submitted to the Commonwealth. And that should, we should have an output from that where the state says, here's what we're putting forward and what the federal government will accept later this calendar year. This is an exciting photo, even though it might look just like machines. This is site mobilization is underway at Ravenna Futures. The most intense looking construction equipment I've ever seen. It's really notable. That work is executing on the $9.7 million Virginia Business Ready Sites grant that the county got last summer. It is enabling AstraZeneca to get a head start on the site prep for their project. It is also helping with site prep for the next large land area at Ravenna Futures that the county still owns and will own. And so that's just an exciting next step for us. We're really excited to see that work get underway really soon. And then also just on Ravenna Futures, staff and members of state government and the federal government met with Senator Warner to brief him on the Ravenna Futures project a couple weeks ago. It was really great to have sort of a whole of government sitting around a table talking about that together. And so we were just wanted to share that with you all. This is our business retention and expansion activity. These numbers are really high. We skipped the June EDA meeting, so this is 2 months of data. And in fairness, it also includes the agribusiness and food processing roundtable that we hosted. And so the ag number is higher than it normally would be, representing the county businesses that participated in that city-county convening. I'm going to skip a couple of these. These are
just all the cool stuff.
Yeah, that we've done. We've been busy. This bottom photo was from the chamber trip to Chapel Hill. Director Metchnick and Chair Long were with us on that, as was our intern Neil Williamson, as was Supervisor LaFisto Kirtley. So we had a good showing on that inner-city trip where we learned a lot about Chapel Hill and Charlottesville on paper look a lot alike. There's a lot of devil in the details there, but I think we learned a lot from them, and a delegation from Chapel Hill is coming here in September. And so we're excited to also help host them in just a couple months. There's some upcoming events that I wanted to highlight. You can pay to see me speak, or you can watch this meeting at a Chamber Economic Forum that is August the 5th. It's the first one. It's the first of these, at least in modern history, that the Chamber is hosting. I think it's a great opportunity to talk to folks who don't normally think about economic development, to hear about economic development. Stephen Hartka from VEDP will be the keynote. He's a really incredibly talented and smart individual. He'll have his keynote is worth it, I promise. And you can leave when he's done. But encourage folks to consider attending that. There's also a lunch and learn hosted by the Central Virginia Regional Housing Partnership next week. That is going to have Jared Ewell with the Community Development Regional Manager. He's the Community Development Regional Manager for the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond, talking about housing as economic development. The chamber had a member of that same Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond office at a public policy meeting a couple weeks ago. It was really interesting to hear sort of from a broader perspective some of the dynamics that drive the housing market. So again, that is a virtual convening that anyone can attend if they want to. All right, we did it.
All right. Any other matters? Anyone else?
I just wanted to know, when we're talking about agribusiness and food production and everything, we're talking about not only growing food and such, but we're also talking about animals, fish, cows, and everything else. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That would fall under food processing.
Pardon?
That could be
would
food
fall under
processing.
Food processing, chickens, and
Mhm.
everything. Okay, good.
Pigs, whatever else. Turkeys.
Turkeys, yeah, dealing with that too.
I have noticed that the discussions tend to be extended when we're talking about food.
I think it's because it's close to dinner time and everybody.
Maybe we need to have those meetings in the morning. So, I will bring up one quick point. I think maybe raised by our intern at a prior occasion about our matters from the public. That our current policy does not allow someone to speak about a issue. You have to sign up in advance. You can't come to the meeting, discover there's something, and say. I think that's probably a policy we should revise, and so I just wanted to mention it to kind of see if others agree with that, and we can work on amending that so that if there are matters of import that people want to speak up about, they can do that if they need to. Since we haven't really been overflowing with public comment.
That's a good idea.
All right, then I think we are adjourned until August 18th.
Yes, sir.
All right. Look forward to the